Okay, class, now that we have written down all the definitions, let's go ahead and do some examples. Let's start with the first example here. We're going to go ahead and look at the x and y coordinates and see how they plot on the line. So we have a -2, -1, so let's find -2 on the x and -1 on the y. Then we have, the next is -1, 0. So let's go -1 and we're going to stay on the line at 0. And then we have 0 and then +1. When the line is drawn in, we have a line that is sloped upwards. So some of the steps we're going to take when we're looking at these graphs to identify the type of slope is we're going to look to see which way the slope goes. Is it going uphill? Is it going downhill? Is it straight across horizontal, or is it up and down vertical? So let's make sure we pay attention to that. So as we see, this slope is going uphill. Then we look at the x and the y coordinates. We have a -2, -1, and 0 for the x, and -1, 0, and 1. That means they're all increasing. So those are some keys to understanding what you're looking at. So we have an upward slope. And our x and our y is increasing. And if we take a look at our notes, we will see that the definition that matches this is a positive slope. So we have a positive slope, it's going upward. The best way to remember the positive slope is that you can imagine a little car or a person going uphill or running up the hill. So let's go ahead to example number 2. This is example 1. Let's go to example number 2. So on this we have the x and y coordinates. We have 1, 3, 2, 2, and 3, 1. If we look at the slope of the line, it's going in a downward motion. So let's go ahead and write that down. Then if we look at the x and y coordinates, we're seeing that the x is increasing. And the y with the 3, 2, and 1 is decreasing. And if we look at our definitions again, we'll see that if we have a downward slope and the x increases and the y decreases, we have what is called a negative slope. And the best way to remember the negative slope is to think of downhill skiing. So, the negative slope. And we have the downward slope or downhill skiing. The positive is going up the hill, running up the hill, or driving your car up the hill. So, in our third example, we have the coordinate points of -2, 2, -1, 2, and +2 and -2. So here's -2, 2, here is -1, 2, and we have +2, -2. Once the line is drawn, we see that we have a horizontal line. So remember, we're looking to see how the line appears on the graph. It's important to remember that we're looking at the graph from left to right, and so we have a horizontal line. Then we take a look at the x and the y coordinates, and we see that the x is changing, but yet the y remains the same or constant. So if we refer back to our notes, we will know that the horizontal line and that the y remaining constant is what we call a zero slope. So a great way to remember this, the horizontal or the zero slope, is to remember these 3 things: h, 0, and y. H is for horizontal. Zero for the name of the slope. And y reminds us that it stays constant. So h0y, horizontal, the name of the slope is a zero slope, and the y remains constant. So now we'll go on to our last example. as we look at the coordinates, we have 2, 1, positive 2, and then we have a positive 1. Then we have a positive 2, negative 1, and a positive 2, and a negative 3. Once we draw the line in, it appears to be a vertical line. So it's going straight up and down. So we know that that's our key, is that it is a vertical line. Then if we look at the x and the y coordinates, we see that the x is remaining constant and while the y is changing. So the x is constant. And if we look at our notes, we'll see that a vertical line with the x coordinates that remain constant is what we call an undefined slope. So, a great way to remember the undefined slope is with these 3 letters, V, U, and X. V is for vertical, U is for undefined, and the X remains constant. So we have V for vertical, U undefined, the X is constant. And the difference between the two, 0 is always going to be a horizontal line, and the undefined is going to be your vertical line. So remember H0Y for 0 and VUX for undefined. Now that we've gone over some examples, I'm going to walk around and see if you guys have any questions, and I will be passing out the practice problems that we will work on for about 15 minutes, and then we will go ahead and go through them.